Pope Francis formally changed Vatican policy today, insisting people seeking God's love and mercy shouldn't be subject to an exhaustive moral analysis.
At 87, Pope Francis has been hit with devastating news that could change everything for him and the Catholic Church. Will his struggles mark the end of an era, or will he rise against the odds once again? Tune in as we uncover the truth behind Pope Francis's greatest battle that will put an end to thousands of years of Catholic Church dominion. When tradition clashes with change. From the moment Pope Francis was elected in 2013, he has walked a delicate line between tradition and reform. Choosing his papal name in honor of St. Francis of Assisi, he set out to embody humility, simplicity, and service to the poor. Unlike many of his predecessors, he rejected the Vatican's luxurious trappings, preferring modest apartments over grand palaces. Yet this outward simplicity has been juxtaposed with the immense complexities of his position. The Catholic Church under his leadership has faced scandals, political divisions, and global crises. Whether addressing environmental degradation, corruption within the Church, or wars that destroy communities, he has not shied away from the world's pain. But even the most resilient leaders can show cracks under pressure. Before we go any further, it's clear that the challenges Pope Francis now faces are far greater than anyone expected, and what comes next may shake the Church to its very core. The Pope's health has long been a topic of discussion. A lung surgery in his youth left him vulnerable to respiratory problems, and his ongoing sciatica often causes him visible pain during public appearances. Despite these struggles, he has continued to travel across continents, delivering messages of hope and unity. However, his recent hospitalization raises an unavoidable question: how much longer can he carry this burden? Watching an aging pope grapple with his physical limits is a stark reminder of the human fragility behind the Vatican's walls. But his trials go beyond his body. They extend deep into his spiritual life, where betrayal, grief, and conflict weigh heavily on his heart. Within the Church, his progressive reforms have sparked fierce opposition. Traditionalists view him as a threat to long-standing doctrines, accusing him of diluting the Church's core beliefs. One of the most contentious moments of his papacy came in 2016, when he suggested a more compassionate approach to divorced and remarried Catholics receiving communion. For many, it was a step toward inclusivity. For others, it was seen as heresy. His critics have been relentless, often painting him as a divisive figure. This internal discord has been amplified by scandals that have rocked the Church. Leaked Vatican documents, accusations of financial misconduct, and mishandled cases of violence have cast shadows over his leadership. Some of these betrayals came from those closest to him, leaving him isolated and wounded. For a man who preaches forgiveness and unity, such betrayals strike at the core of his mission. It is a painful irony that while he calls for reconciliation, he is met with a resistance from within. The Pope has also carried personal grief throughout his life. He has spoken openly about losing loved ones, including his mother and close relatives. These losses, combined with the deaths of friends and allies, have left him reflective about his mortality. As he nears the end of his earthly path, these moments of sorrow are more frequent and profound. It is during these times that his humanity becomes most visible. Whether shedding tears during prayers or struggling to finish a speech on sensitive topics, his emotions reveal a man burdened by love for humanity and the enormity of his responsibilities. Yet, even as his physical and emotional struggles persist, Pope Francis remains committed to addressing the world's most pressing issues. From climate change to poverty, his voice has been unwavering. In his encyclical Laudato Si, he called for global action to protect the environment, framing it as both a moral and spiritual duty. While his words have inspired millions, progress has been slow, and the destruction of the planet continues. Rising sea levels, deforestation, and natural disasters weigh heavily on the Pope's conscience as he sees the most vulnerable suffering the consequences. Even with his health struggles, Pope Francis continues to lead the world through difficult times. A voice for the poor in a divided world. Similarly, his response to the COVID-19 pandemic was a testament to his leadership. At a time when the world was paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, Pope Francis stood as a symbol of hope. His solitary figure in a rain-soaked St. Peter's Square, delivering a message of faith, remains etched in the minds of millions. He called for global vaccine equity, urging wealthy nations to share with the poor. But his appeals often fell on deaf ears, leaving him disheartened by humanity's lack of compassion. Pope Francis's advocacy extends to the plight of refugees, migrants, and the marginalized. He has consistently condemned the building of walls and the closing of borders, calling instead for bridges of understanding. His visits to refugee camps, where he embraced those living in unimaginable conditions, symbolize his belief that the Church must be a refuge for the poor and oppressed. Yet his compassion has been met with backlash. Nationalists and populists accuse him of interfering in politics, while others argue that his views are idealistic and impractical. Still, the Pope remains resolute, believing that the Church's mission is to serve the most vulnerable. One of Pope Francis's greatest challenges has been navigating the growing divide within the Catholic Church. On one side are the traditionalists, who cling tightly to doctrine and oppose any form of change. On the other are the reformers, who see Pope Francis as a beacon of progress, but demand even bolder actions. His efforts to address topics such as gender roles, birth control, and LGBTQ+ rights have sparked heated debates. While he has expressed openness to civil unions for same-sex couples and called for compassion toward marginalized groups, his actions have not satisfied everyone. Some criticize him for going too far, while others believe he has not gone far enough. Despite the relentless criticism, Pope Francis has remained focused on his mission. He has restructured the Vatican's charitable programs, emphasizing direct aid to those in need. Projects like building shelters for the homeless near the Vatican and supporting disaster relief efforts in Turkey, Syria, and Ukraine reflect his commitment to mercy and justice. He has also pushed for economic reforms, calling for debt relief in impoverished nations and condemning the exploitation of workers. These efforts, while impactful, highlight the vast inequalities that persist in the modern world, a reality that weighs heavily on the Pope's heart. As Pope Francis's health continues to decline, speculation about his successor grows louder. Among the potential candidates is Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, a man known for his dedication to peace and social justice. Like Pope Francis, Zuppi has worked tirelessly to address poverty, conflict, and environmental issues. His involvement in peace negotiations in Mozambique and Central America has earned him respect as a compassionate leader. Many see him as someone who could carry forward Pope Francis's vision of a church that prioritizes the poor and promotes global unity. But no matter who follows, the legacy of Pope Francis will be hard to match. His papacy has been defined by humility, courage, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. He has called on the Church to be a place of healing and inclusion, even as he himself faces deep wounds from betrayal and opposition. His leadership during times of crisis, whether the pandemic, environmental collapse, or internal conflicts, has revealed both his strength and his vulnerability. Pope Francis's life serves as a reminder that even the most revered leaders are human. They experience pain, doubt, and exhaustion, yet they persist in their mission. For Pope Francis, that mission has always been clear: to serve God by serving humanity. Whether through acts of charity, messages of hope, or moments of quiet prayer, he has remained steadfast in his belief that love and compassion can heal the world's deepest wounds. As he battles his declining health, the world watches with a mix of admiration and concern. What will his final days bring? Will his legacy inspire future leaders to follow his path of humility and justice? Pope Francis may be nearing the end of his path, but his impact on the Church and the world will endure for generations. His struggles remind us of the fragility of life, the power of faith, and the enduring call to serve others, no matter the cost. To understand who Pope Francis really is, we need to go back to where he started, a simple home that shaped his values. From Buenos Aires to the heart of the Church. Jorge Mario Bergoglio, better known as Pope Francis, started his life far from the grandeur of the Vatican. Born on December 17, 1936 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, he came from a family of Italian immigrants who worked hard to make a living. His father, Mario, kept books as an accountant for the railway system, while his mother, Regina, stayed home, dedicating herself to raising their 5 children. The Flores neighborhood where they lived was a simple yet vibrant area, filled with the rich mix of Argentine and Italian cultures. This blend gave him a unique identity, and it wasn't long before he was fluent in Spanish and Italian. Growing up in a household where nothing was wasted, he and his siblings quickly learned the value of discipline and humility. Wasting food was a major sin in their family. Everyone was expected to clean their plates. These strict lessons about moderation stayed with him throughout his life. He grew up understanding that you didn't need a lot to live a meaningful life, and this mindset shaped his choices long after he left his family home. While many children played carelessly, he stood out as a thoughtful, quiet boy who observed more than he spoke. His education started in a public school in Buenos Aires, where he blended in like any other kid. But young Jorge was never one to stay average. He later attended a technical school, something that gave him practical knowledge beyond books. In that technical secondary school, he earned a diploma as a chemical technician, a serious accomplishment for someone of his background. After completing his studies, he entered the workforce, taking up a job in the food processing industry. It was steady, practical work, but it didn't seem to fulfill him. Something deeper was stirring inside him. Life, however, has a way of stopping us in our tracks, and for him, that moment came at the age of 21. A severe case of pneumonia hit him hard, forcing doctors to remove part of his right lung. This wasn't just a physical blow, but also a moment that shook him mentally and spiritually. Facing such a health scare so young, he began to ask himself what he really wanted from life. Was he meant to live a simple life of technical work, or was there something greater he was being called to do? By 1958, he felt the pull of a higher calling. He entered the novitiate of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, a religious order known for its deep intellectual tradition and commitment to education. This decision marked a sharp turn in his life. His studies in the humanities began in Santiago, Chile, where he immersed himself in philosophy, spirituality, and the kind of critical thinking that would define his future leadership. In 1963, he returned to Argentina with a degree in philosophy from Colegio de San Jose in San Miguel. But studying philosophy was only one part of his formation. Between 1964 and 1966, he taught literature and psychology to high school students in Santa Fe and Buenos Aires. Those who knew him at the time saw a man who connected deeply with his students. He wasn't a distant, rigid figure. He was a mentor who made his lessons about more than textbooks. He encouraged his students to think for themselves, to question life's purpose, and to serve others, a message he would carry into his later years. Teaching was just a stepping stone in his spiritual path. By 1970, he completed his theological studies and earned a degree also from the Colegio de San Jose. That same year, he prepared for his ordination as a priest, which took place on December 13, 1969. This was a significant moment, not just for him, but for those who would eventually look up to him as a spiritual leader. His dedication to the Jesuits deepened further in 1973 when he took his final vows and was appointed the provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina. This leadership role would test his values and convictions in ways he couldn't have imagined. The challenges he faced as a young leader were tough. In a time of fear, the choices he made showed the kind of person he was. Leading through Argentina's darkest years. The 1970s were a dark and dangerous time in Argentina. The country was gripped by a military dictatorship that silenced dissent and persecuted anyone seen as a threat. His actions during these years have been the subject of debate. Critics question whether he did enough to oppose the regime, while supporters believe he acted bravely behind the scenes. He later shared that he had worked quietly to hide people from the authorities and help some escape the country. While the truth remains complex, it's clear that his leadership during these years wasn't just about religious duties. It was about survival, protection, and navigating a moral battlefield. After stepping down as provincial superior in 1979, his focus returned to education and pastoral work. He served as a seminary teacher and rector, guiding future priests and deepening his understanding of the Catholic Church's role in a changing world. His intellectual path took him beyond Argentina's borders as well. In the early 1980s, he traveled to Germany to continue his theological studies. This period shaped his views further, giving him a broader perspective on faith, culture, and global challenges. By the early 1990s, his leadership within the Catholic Church was undeniable. In 1992, he was appointed Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires, a role that prepared him for even greater responsibilities. 6 years later, in 1998, he became the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. His rise within the church's hierarchy wasn't marked by ambition, but by a quiet, unwavering commitment to serving others. As Archbishop, his humility became legendary. While many leaders enjoyed the privileges of their office, he lived in a small, modest apartment rather than the Grand Archbishop's residence. He cooked his own meals and often took the bus instead of a private car. To outsiders, this might have seemed odd for someone in his position, but for him it was simply a continuation of the values he learned as a boy in Buenos Aires. He believed that church leaders should live like the people they served, not above them. His concern for the poor and marginalized was at the heart of his ministry. Buenos Aires, like much of Argentina, faced deep economic and social challenges. Unemployment, poverty, and inequality were daily realities for many. He didn't just preach about helping the poor, he lived it. He visited slums, spoke out against corruption, and encouraged his priests to go into the streets and connect with the people. His actions spoke louder than words, and he quickly became known as a man of the people. In 2001, Pope John Paul II recognized his leadership and elevated him to the rank of cardinal. This was a significant honor, but it didn't change the way he lived or led. Even as a cardinal, he maintained his simple lifestyle, choosing humility over privilege. He continued to push for social justice and to challenge the church to focus on its mission of serving the vulnerable. By 2013, the Catholic Church faced a major turning point. Pope Benedict XVI's sudden resignation left the world in shock, and the search for a new leader began. When the conclave of cardinals gathered to elect a new pope, he emerged as the surprising choice. On March 13, 2013, he was elected the 266th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. The name he chose, Francis, was no accident. By selecting the name of Saint Francis of Assisi, he sent a clear message about the kind of leader he intended to be. Saint Francis was known for his love of the poor, his humility, and his deep connection to nature. These same values defined his life, and they would now guide his papacy. Pope Francis's early experiences, growing up in a working-class family, surviving illness, leading during Argentina's darkest days, shaped him into the leader the church needed at that moment. His focus on humility, simplicity, and social justice didn't just resonate with Catholics, but with people worldwide. He spoke openly about poverty, inequality, and the need for compassion in a world often divided by wealth and power. While his leadership has not been without controversy, Pope Francis's life is a testament to the idea that great leaders are not born into privilege, but are shaped by their struggles, choices, and values. The boy from Buenos Aires, who once studied chemistry and worked in a food plant, became a global symbol of hope and change. Pope Francis's path is not just about faith, but about the power of humility, service, and unwavering belief in a better world. Is Pope Francis's health decline simply a natural part of aging, or does it signal something far deeper about the future of the Catholic Church and its leadership? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know what you believe. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.